so much for coming. This is Chemtracker, a customer's experience. So this is a product webinar, not the same as our EHS community webinars. So it's a little bit different, but we love that so many of you are joining us. We were just absolutely overwhelmed by how many people registered for this. So we're thrilled that you are here. If you would like to do our Mentee Poll, we'll take a look at it later on. Go to menti.com and type in the number 5298 1597. I'll try to drop it into the chat for us. And that will, oh yeah, there's that. And here are who we have here, who I will ask if they will do their own bios in just 1 minute. And so you can see a little bit about them. So Sarina and Tiff, feel free to certainly add anything else to your bio, anything you'd like to talk about or whatever, maybe something that people don't know about whatever that you do or whatever, like you're a Globetrotter, as I know now about Sarina, my coworker, which is lovely. And here are upcoming EHS community webinars in the next several weeks. We have Designing or Renovating Labs, How to Avoid Problems in 2 weeks. In 4 weeks, we have Fire Codes, Chemical Inventories, and You, Part 2. That goes out to you, Bart, of course, my poor French. So part 2 of that, which should be very exciting. And then a new one coming up for us in 6 weeks, field safety. What's going on out there as we're all kind of maybe ramping up for field work. So let's get going with this. And I'm going to stop that and stop sharing my screen. I guess I did that. And so I'm Jonathan Klain. I am merely our host and moderator, but you're here to really hear from our panelists, from Tiff Nelson, who is joining us from Syracuse University in Syracuse, New York, which we were talking about before. And Syracuse University is a customer. They use BioRAFT, so that's why Tiff is joining us. And also Sarina Schwartz-Hinds. And Sarina is our manager of chemical solutions here and has degrees in chemistry, far many than I have. I don't have any. And so I'm going to ask Tiff and then Sarina if they would please do their further introductions, ladies.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tiff Nelson. I earned my PhD in chemistry from Syracuse University in 2017. After my graduate work, I spent a year in academia, and then I accepted a position as a research scientist at a small local biotech company. In March of last year, I was very excited to hear of an opportunity in the EHSS community at Syracuse University as the chemical safety specialist. So in this role, I manage all incoming chemical deliveries and inventories and research spaces across campus. And as Jonathan had mentioned, we do use Chemtracker, and it's been pivotal in our success for collecting and maintaining the chemical inventory on campus.
Wonderful. Yes, thank you so much. And I'm very impressed with anyone who has a PhD, especially in a hard science like that. I do want to do a very quick shout out to Rami. Rami is joining us from Beirut, Lebanon. So I'm sorry, Bart, but it looks like Rami has you beat for distance and farthest. But I think it's wonderful that we're reaching people all over the globe as well as the United States. So thank you all very, very much. And please excuse that I have a lightsaber going right now here, but you know, we're just having fun here at BioRAFT like we always do. Sarina, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Jonathan. Hi, good afternoon, good morning, good night, right? Depending on the time zone to everyone. First, I'd like to extend a thank you to Tiff for joining us today on our webinar. So my background prior to joining BioRAFT, I've been at BioRAFT now almost 8 years. And part of that, I was a chemist. I was a chemistry graduate student, and now at BioRAFT, I work on anything to do with the Chemtracker module. So this includes talking with prospective customers as they're learning about the module to start with. I'm also involved some on implementations, and I work directly with our development team as a member of our product team on the design and development of new features here, mostly with the Chemtracker module. But for those of you looking at incident management, I'm leading that working group as well here. Thank you, Jonathan.
All sorts of stuff. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Sarina. And it's great to hear about all the great things we're doing. I also wanted to say I was really impressed when I joined and found out how many people work for us that actually are former researchers. It's really neat to do that. So we definitely all sort of geek out at times about research. All right, so, and I think that Chris is going to launch our first poll. Since you've all joined us, we kind of would love to get a feel for, there we go. Thank you very much, Chris. Yeah, how familiar are you with Chemtracker? So please do answer that, let us know. And then, of course, the usual, are you interested in being a panelist? We would not be doing this were it not for you. So be it an EHS community webinar on a certain topic, you've seen a lot of the ones that are coming up, or perhaps a product webinar as well, if you do happen to be a customer. We will be doing more of these. It's pretty clear to us that there is an audience for this. And boy, don't we love you all for telling us and showing us that. Thank you so much. But please do vote. It's how we know what the heck we want to do next. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. All right. And what is a panelist? So a panelist is like Tiff and Sarina are, or in our EHS community webinars, a panelist is someone who has is a subject matter expert. And so I was talking before about Bart Dervaux, who has an incredible amount of expertise. He works in Dow in reactive chemicals. And I got in contact with him, and he and a couple of other colleagues from other companies or institutions join us as panelists. So reach out to me, jonathan.klain@bioraft.com. I'm happy to chat with you. All right, I think what we want to do briefly first is for those that perhaps aren't as familiar, I think Sarina, you were going to do somewhat of an overview for us. And of course, Tiff, anything, you can certainly be the color commentary in this case and talk about how you use different parts. And we're gonna transition to Tiff once Sarina's done with the overview.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. This one I'll keep really brief. Later in our webinar today, I'll be showing a little preview of Chemtracker, so you'll get to see what it looks like in the screen. But for those of you who are new to BioRAFT and new to Chemtracker, right, BioRAFT is an enterprise risk and safety management solution focusing on laboratory safety, though we're in other areas as well, especially for Chemtracker. And Chemtracker is chemical inventory and reporting, right, all in one solution. So BioRAFT does offer a full suite of modules for everything from tracking inspections and safety training and equipment. Today, we're going to be focusing on chemical inventory. Within BioRAFT, we think about that essentially in two parts for Chemtracker. Our inventory side, right, the day-to-day management of those thousands or hundreds of thousands of bottles, and then the regulatory reports that follow. This could be Cfats, fire code, and more, as well as an SDS solution that, right, ties with all of that together. And this is all web-based. You don't need to download special software. And at most institutions, we'll also integrate with some of your IT systems for full enterprise support here. Let's go ahead and dive in, Jonathan.
Yeah, let's do it, definitely. And I do want to, I didn't mention it, but I see one question already in the Q&A. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for the intro to Chemtracker. But Ryan has asked a question already, which we will get to. So what I wanted to do is draw people's attention to that. The chat is great for the resources. You can drop links in, like John Zybel, who works with us as well, dropped in for the webinars. But please, questions that you have, and we know the questions some of you asked in your registration. Any question, you can ask it at any time, and we're going to be getting to that later in the webinar. So yeah, so let's do that. So we're going to now have really a conversation, and really, you know, Tiff is going to be helping us understand really, you know, how is it that the customer really uses it? What's that experience like? That's the title of it. And then with Sarina being the expert and not me, I won't be doing that much talking. The two of them will be able to really engage in this conversation. So I think we want to start by kind of generally talking about you know, why and how you use it, how to use it on a daily basis, and maybe start to get into eventually, you know, what are the different features that you personally use and that others use. But there's a lot there, and why don't you just go ahead and start, and Sarina will do a lot of good redirecting.
Yeah, sounds good. So prior to getting Chemtracker on campus, we didn't really have an efficient way of knowing the chemical inventories and the research spaces. So the big push to get Chemtracker, why it was so favorable for us, was the chemical inventory option, the ability to access online safety data sheets, and the reporting that Sarina had just mentioned. We really liked it to be a one-stop shop for us where we could access all three of those things. So I manage a chemical receiving area. It's a centralized chemical receiving area where we get all the incoming packages. And what we do is we remove all the chemicals from their packaging, we barcode them, and record all that information into Chemtracker before we distribute them out to campus use locations. And then we additionally assign safety data sheets to each chemical container that we would want the researcher to reference, so that that is also available when they receive their chemical package.
Definitely a good day-to-day overview there. In terms of the specific features, we talked a little bit about, I know SDS sheets was one that you mentioned there. Tiff, would you want to take us through a little bit more about how you organize safety data sheets in Chemtracker and what that process is like?
Yeah, definitely. So Chemtracker has an extensive database of online safety data sheets. I really haven't had an issue finding a safety data sheet from a large manufacturing company like a Sigma or Fisher. There's plenty to choose from too. There's older versions and then there's newly revised editions. Sometimes there are some smaller obscure chemicals that come in to receiving and they come with their own safety data sheet. So what's really nice about Chemtracker is that you can use the upload function. So if there is one that you would prefer to use something else that the database has, then you can just upload it and it saves it. So if you get that chemical again in the future, you can just reference that safety data sheet again.
I'm so glad to hear that feature has been working out well at Syracuse. That attachment feature, I think it came out maybe about a year or so ago. It's, I'd say, on like the newer end here. So always happy to hear that one is working out well here. So let's see, we talked about SDS. Let's talk a little bit, right, the safety data sheets is one side, you talked about receiving. What about things like moving inventory, right? During our demo, I'll show maybe a little bit of bulk edit perhaps, but right, we all know the chemicals, right? They don't stay in place. The labs don't stay in place. So people are moving around. Tell us a little bit about how you manage that with Chemtracker today.
Yeah, absolutely. So our STEM research is expanding vastly on campus. We're, getting new faculty and staff, and we have some new research initiatives now on campus. So our current faculty are temporarily being moved to some areas while they do these lab renovations. And it's really easy in the bulk edit function in Chemtracker to just choose one room and move everything over to another room. It only takes a couple minutes. I can do it remote, which is great. I don't actually have to scan in all the barcodes at that location or even go visit the location. And then another thing too, another example would be if anyone had a chemical exchange program or a chemical surplus program, see where this would work really well, because you are transferring chemical containers through multiple hands, essentially from one PI to the next or from one location to another.
Oh yeah, that's a big one. We hear a lot about folks wanting to run surplusing programs, right, with green labs and all these initiatives within the system here. I know there was one specific topic we were thinking about talking about here. So we talked about the exchange program, the stockroom and transferring. Was there anything that's been, I guess, surprising about Chemtracker that's been surprisingly helpful, or ways you didn't expect to use it that you have?
Yeah, I can speak to both of those. So something that's been helpful, might be a little bit underestimated, it seems very simple, is the export function into Excel. Personally, I love working in Excel.
Me too.
Like we assigned this thing. I'm
Yeah.
not really sure. But no, it's great. I can't tell you how many times I've had to refer to a document or maybe send someone a document, and it's been helpful to either view the inventory and apply as many filters as I would like to, and then I can export that document and share my findings with someone else. Or just a couple months ago, we were doing some deliveries on campus, and I needed to reference all the spaces in a building. So that was a quick download the Excel spreadsheet of all the spaces in the building and just kind of walk over there and delivered all those spaces. It's been very helpful.
Oh, this is so nice to hear. I love hearing about all the ways Chemtracker has made a difference here. Um, what else, Tiff, has been, I know about BioRAFT in general, some other features we hear about are things like Smart Mailer or the announcements. I know it's a little off track of Chemtracker, but of those ones that you've had a chance to use yet?
We do use the announcements, or rather the external links on homepage, so that we can direct researchers to another site to complete their training. So that's been really helpful because it acts as a one-stop shop for our researchers where they can check their inventory, they can check the announcements and go right to their training. The Smart Mailer we have not used to its full potential, just because we are still organizing our platform and how we want to use it. But that seems like such a great feature. You can filter who you want to email to, whether it be all the laser users or biosafety level 2 users, or just PIs or just grad students. It seems really great to avoid going through listservs through email.
Yeah.
So that seems very helpful, but we have not used that to its potential yet.
Well, it's there. It's there when you're ready. I know barcodes is one. I get asked by folks a lot, especially when they're first starting inventory, about using barcodes or even RFID tags. What has your experience been with barcodes and Chemtracker, especially in like a stockroom context?
We currently use barcodes. I'm not sure that we really looked into the RFID. Off the top of my head, it seems like they would be more costly.
They are.
But barcodes have been, easy to access, easy to make. So we've been using those. With the stockroom, we have completed the chemical inventory in our department stockroom. And as far as transferring those chemicals from one location to another, we just ask that the researchers on campus reach out to us if they're going to take something from the stockroom, and then remotely I just move it to their location.
Sounds seamless here. Excuse me. Always good. Always good. Well, I know that we do want to get to a demo here. But anything else, Tiff, about Chemtracker that you want to share with folks here, or any advice for folks looking at inventory or getting started with it?
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy to use. I'm excited that we didn't have a learning curve, I guess. It's easy just to jump on the internet. It's accessible everywhere. It's pretty intuitive. We did provide some in-house training for the researchers, just to show them how we were going to be using it and what their options are if they wanted to expand and add a sublocation and things of that nature. But yeah, it's really easy to use. We haven't had an issue finding a manufacturer for the most part, or like I said, all of the common safety data sheets are available. It's great.
Oh, well, thank you so much. This is so nice. So nice for us to hear, for me to hear.
Absolutely. Yeah. And do you want to do the walkthrough demo now, Sarina? Would this be a good time?
Absolutely. Let me go ahead and pull up
Sure.
our site here. And I see there might be a question for Tiff here while I'm pulling that up.
Well, there was in the chat. And so in the chat was, and so folks, the chat we lose track of. So questions, please put them in the Q&A. Do yourselves and us, please, a favor. But I will try to get these. So Alessandra asked, how long has Syracuse been using Chemtracker? And I do think you mentioned that the learning curve was relatively easy, but she was asking about that as well.
So I believe the software was purchased before I started in March. So I want to say somewhere between December and March. I remember maybe the week before I started, I hopped right on a webinar with you guys and I was learning how to use the product. So they already had a license for it before I had started. So I'm going to say December 2020 is my guess. Yeah, the learning curve was pretty minimal. We met with our implementation manager and we had routine meetings in the beginning, which was very helpful, just to kind of work out some of the minor things, and build the program and organize all the spaces and inventory in the beginning. But no, yeah, the learning curve was very minimal. It's pretty intuitive.
Sure. And just because I don't want to lose track of it, and Sarina, if this is more for you, that's fine.
Okay.
But Catherine asks, is Chemtracker connected to Pubmed?
I actually haven't had that request yet. It is not connected to Pubmed. We do, however, have a link out to PubChem. So I haven't used Pubmed as much. I know PubChem is a pretty popular resource. So for a lot of the chemicals, you can link out and see some more data there, and they connect to all sorts of sources. I think they connect to Pubmed as well.
I was going to mention that.
Thank you. Yeah, but if there's something you're looking for in particular with that, I'd love to hear more about it. Is this about finding papers or the end goal there?
Yeah.
So I know we have a lot of questions, and we got some questions when folks are registering. I want to answer as many of those as we can today. I'm going to go over some basics here with the demo, and Tiff, feel free to chime in anytime here, even interrupt me. You can ask anyone on the BioRAFT team. I will keep going about Chemtracker as long as folks are on. But today it's going to be very high level. If anyone does want to see a more deep dive, personalized demo of Chemtracker, Jonathan will give resources about how folks can get in touch with us to set up a one-on-one demo as well. So the demo site I have pulled up here, Jonathan, can you confirm it's showing? Perfect. Okay. This is one of a few demo sites we have for BioRAFT. This one is only Chemtracker. So this is sort of like a generic Chemtracker demo site. It doesn't have our other modules enabled. We do have some customers that use only Chemtracker. I'd say most are going to add in some other modules here. But we like this one for this, right, this basic view. So from this perspective, this is like an inventory manager or someone who's in EHS, or maybe someone in a role like Tiff has here, where they can enter data, right, for any of the given laboratories. And let's start looking at this data here. So what I have pulled up, our chemical containers page, this is like the first stop for chemical inventory. So we can come in here and we can see how many containers we have. So it looks like we have about 2,000 on this demo site here. And for each one of these chemical containers, right, wow, we have, right, a lot in here. We can see information like a CAS number, the physical state, the size of the container. I'm going to go ahead and pop this open here and actually expand this window a little bit. So I can actually, right, look at this if I have this up on a larger screen. But one thing to know, right, everything in BioRAFT, especially in Chemtracker, is also mobile friendly. So I can take this on the go if I need to look up a chemical. I could even connect a barcode scanner to my mobile device or computer. And if I scan a container, it's going to pull up the data for that container. And I can see safety data sheets, right? Tiff was talking about our SDS attachments here. If I complete an attachment, I can download that here. And Jonathan, as I'm going through, if you see anything in the Q&A you think is relevant to one of these, go ahead and toss it in here and I can address it while we're in here. I know there was a question early on about offline capabilities. So Chemtracker is an online only system, but it does work on mobile devices here. And we do have ways you can download that data. So if you want to take like a spreadsheet, right, like Tiff was talking about our spreadsheet downloads here, you can take that to go. But you do need that connection here for adding new data. And right, there's so much detail we can add, right? For every chemical container, I have a group that owns it. We can track a specific person, the exact room, even the sub location of where that container is located. We can optionally track that. We don't have a ton of required fields though. We want to make sure that when you're adding data, there's not all these barriers, right, to getting that container in. And again, there's a lot of details here, more than I'll be able to get into here, but let's look at some of our use cases for everyday inventory needs. One that comes up a lot when I talk to folks who are using Chemtracker or trying to figure out their chemical safety programs is how do we manage peroxide forming materials? Now, Tiff, I don't know if you got bugged about this in graduate school. This was one of my jobs in the laboratory, was testing in my institution. We did test our THF for peroxides, all of this. Some folks will just say, throw that out. I won't get into that debate here. With Chemtracker, though, we have a way where you can find those. And this is going to be available for also the researchers, the scientists themselves. So again, I'm logged in at this high oversight level, but all of the tools other than like our Cfats report and those regulatory reports are available for lab members as well, including reconciliation. There's a version of bulk edit. And of course, what I'm showing now, finding peroxide formers. So this is going to be marked automatically actually from the Chemtracker chemical database, where this hazard data comes from. So for most of the chemicals in a typical laboratory inventory, we expect this to be roughly 80 to 90% of your chemicals, So not all of them. There's always going to be some that aren't in the database, but most of them, we're going to have this regulatory data built in. And this database was actually first started by Stanford University. So let me click on one of these peroxide formers, I can also find my expired ones. If I want to see everything that's expired, we can see how many expired peroxide formers we have. And for any one of these chemicals, let's look at diethyl ether, for example. I can click on that chemical and I'm going to see information from the Chemtracker database. So I can see I have multiple names for the chemical. And again, this was first started by Stanford University, and in 2017, we were so lucky, to be able to license IP from Stanford, and we built Chemtracker as you see it today. And with that, we still have the Chemtracker database, which is now maintained and being expanded by BioRAFT. So we have storage groups. You have the option to add safety data sheets. Someone asked, are safety data sheets automatically attached here? This right now is not an automated process, so that is something we do have actually upcoming in our roadmap soon. It's going to be a service we'll offer so that those could be automatically uploaded. But right now you can attach them here. We have processes to do that in bulk. Add other attachments. We'll display the structure for reference here. And then of course our regulatory data. And that's going to power our reports. So let me go in. Let's look at some of our reports here. I won't be able to get to all of these. Again, we are keeping the demo short, and I know we have a long list of questions to get to. But within this report, I can see this is one report where I can use any regulation in the Chemtracker database, of which there are many. Let's say we want to look at maybe our suggested list of particularly hazardous substances under Osha, in this case, highly toxic ones. We can see all those chemicals, and I can also convert this into different units. So we haven't talked about, I know, fire code report. Tiff, I know that's not your wheelhouse, but one that I know Syracuse has been starting to use here. That's for looking at maximum allowable quantities, seeing how flammable liquids per control area or floor, are comparing to those limits here. Jonathan, I know this is definitely a passion topic of yours from your previous roles before BioRAFT. That's one, I won't have time to get into the details of that, but we do have that report in BioRAFT as well. And that's definitely a customer favorite. I know there is one question someone had written in the registration about, what are some features about Chemtracker that are different than other inventory systems? There's not a broad answer yet, but I'd say the fire code report is one that folks often don't find in systems. Just this afternoon, I was on the phone with one of our account executives, Dana, with a customer looking at BioRAFT, and the fire code report was one they said they hadn't seen in other inventory systems. It's a little bit unusual, and we're very proud to be able to offer here. So with that, we also have Cfats reports. You can see, for Department of Homeland Security, no one wants to get in trouble with them, and that report is a beast, to do by hand, look at chemicals of interest, and there's a lot in here. So again, the goal with Chemtracker, I introduced at the beginning, there's two parts, inventory and reporting. We want to make sure you have tools to keep that inventory fresh, and then you can pull those reports in just a few clicks. We see that export button. Another one, right? Reconciliation. This is for keeping this inventory up to date. So you can do inventory audits, inventory refreshes with this tool. This is one I do have a detailed video about this on BioRAFT.com on the website if you want to see, right, the full process here, but it lets you go through a checklist of the chemicals on hand. And especially if you're using barcodes or RFID tags, both of which can be used with Chemtracker, there's a lot of data, right, that we can get through with this system here. And then of course we have bulk edit, right? Tiff talked about this for moving chemicals around. This is a customer favorite feature. So you can move or edit or delete up to 1,000 containers at once with this system. And the last thing I'll show here at a high level, right, is when we add new inventory, we try to keep this process really simple. So you can find a chemical in our database here. We also have a product database you can use as well. So if you know, I don't know these catalog numbers off the top of my head. One day I'm going to memorize one for a demo though. But if you had, right, your container in front of you, you can enter that product number, will indicate the group that's going to be responsible here. And you know, with Chemtracker, we can enter even just this basic data. You don't need to fill out a million fields, right? I could start with just these fields. If I was going to use a barcode, I know someone had asked about barcode printing. So we don't print labels through BioRAFT, right? No one likes dealing with printers. they're always a hassle. Folks will use pre-printed barcodes. This comes on rolls or sheets. You'll be able to scan that in here. And we have all sorts of tools with that. And then optionally, I can add more detail if I want to. Like I can assign a specific person to a container. I can track lot numbers. I can get more specific than just that room here. Receive date, right? That expiration date, especially for my peroxide formers, right? This one isn't a peroxide former, thankfully, but I'd want to track that expiration date. And then when I create this, right, for those chemicals from the database, I'm now going to have access to that Chemtracker database. So if I click this chemical name, I'm going to see the regulations and hazards, and any SDSs I'd previously attached here are going to show right on that page here. So that is our high-level demo of Chemtracker. I'm going to leave the screen up while we go through the questions, just so that if we need a visual, we have that available here. I know I didn't pause here a lot, but Tiff, is there anything you'd like me to highlight here or anything you wanted to add?
I just do want to mention real quickly, so we only really use the room to record all the chemical inventory, but we leave it as an option for the researchers and the lab members in the lab if they want to add a sublocation, whether it's in a glove box or on a certain shelf or a certain fridge, things of that nature. Since there is no way of us exactly knowing where that would go into the space. So that's something too, although you have those fields available, like you said, you don't really need to fill them in.
Have them as an option. Yeah, I like that, right? Where you have, it's nice you have the service for the scientists where they're, right, the initial inventory is logged in, but then they can get more specific about exactly where that chemical is if they want to.
Right. We have some researchers that take advantage of that. They will go in after we deliver the chemicals and they'll add the specific location, but again, not required.
Great. Okay, Jonathan, I see we have a lot of questions.
Yeah, we do. Boy, do we. That was great. Thank you both, Sarina and Tiff. This is great.
You.
So trying to ask people, please put them in the Q&A. They're very hard to keep track of in the chat. It keeps scrolling away. David did want to know if we can show the fire code report. I don't know how feasible in our time and the screen and all of that it is, or if you prefer to talk about it, or of course for anyone that wants more, I did want to mention this and I'll drop it in the chat now. If there's anything we don't get to, or you want to talk to us or whatever, there is the link, or of course you can email us generally at sales@bioraft.com. So either way, just in case, because we may not get to everything right here, and you may want a real personalized demo, and that's perfectly fine. So how did you want to address the request about fire codes, Sarina?
Yeah, is this David Conrad?
It
I hope
is.
so. Hi, David. It's been a while since we've last chatted. This is one, David, I'm happy to get on a call with you and go in this in great detail. I mean, you are definitely an expert in this area for sure.
Yeah,
I
and
was lucky.
that's fine. Yeah, we're not going to be able to get to every single one of these or do it. But I think several did ask, and I see in the chat, I didn't want to lose track of it. Juliet asked, and I think others did in the Q&A. That Tiff, this is more to you. You mentioned using the announcements for training. Do you also have the BioRAFT training module? So I think more than one person has asked about the training module. So if you want to speak towards that, and Sarina can add anything afterwards.
We currently have the Chemtracker module. We don't have any other modules. We are actively looking into other modules though.
Cool. Great. Yeah. And the training module does a whole lot of stuff. Always happy to chat about that. Maybe that's another product webinar that people want us to do. We will have a poll before we close out that asks, hey, you attended this, what else would you like us to do on these product webinars? So please be on the lookout for that, or just reach out to any of us here. So, we do get questions often about how do we compare with others, because people are trying to figure out their stuff. And Sarina, they did ask, sorry to put you on the spot, or Tiff, if you looked at it before, feel free, but Carmen did ask how we compare to MSDS Online as far as reports go. And if you're, if you can't speak to it, that's perfectly fine as well, of course, Sarina.
Yeah, no, this is one I'm happy to answer. I think the most critical thing is that for anyone looking at an inventory system, that we're able to provide you the information you need to fit what's the best fit for your institution. And I will say I haven't personally used MSDS Online before. We have had customers move to BioRAFT from MSDS Online. I will also share that we've tried to work with MSDS Online and partner with them before, which they maybe weren't so keen on at the time, but hopefully that door will open again. MSDS Online is very much an SDS focused system, right? As their name. I think they have maybe some new name now as well. Mm-hmm. And in that sense, I'd say it's a very different focus than Chemtracker. And you'll see a lot of inventory systems, right, fall into this spectrum. And folks who've talked with me about SDS before probably heard my spiel about this, but it's almost a spectrum, right, from SDS to chemical inventory. And the perfect would be a system in the middle, right, that does both of those things absolutely perfectly. And that's what we're trying to do with Chemtracker. I won't say we're there yet. I'd say most of the strengths of Chemtracker are with inventory and the regulatory reporting. I believe that we have more regulatory reports and better and easier to use reports than MSDS Online, though. Again, that's not one I have stats to back up.
That's fine.
Yeah. But I'd say the biggest difference you'll see and why a lot of folks have chosen Chemtracker is that the inventory side is easier to use. So while we don't have quite like this SDS binder concept, we also don't require the same amount of, necessary level of detail for inventory as well. So folks are typically finding it's just an easier system to work with.
Yeah, and maybe that's a good segue to this next question. And I will say, if you already covered it, please feel free to remind me of that. Can't keep track of everything, that's for sure. But Marcy, and Carmen said, thank you. Thank you for the thank you. And we're very happy to, Carmen, of course. Love the interaction. I love the conversation here, right? Absolutely. Technology can be great. So Marcy did ask, does the SDS for a specific product only attach to an individual PI's inventory? And Tiff, if you want to chime in on your experience with this, and a back and forth between you and Sarina, I think is a good way of managing all of these.
Yeah, so there's a bulk add function for the SDSs when you are assigning them to containers. I'm not sure. Yeah, Sarina's demoing that right now. I don't use this to its full potential either, just because I do want to go into each container and kind of see where it's at. So no, I don't use this as I should. It's probably way more efficient if you use the bulk assignment for the SDSs.
Do you
Yeah,
want to
that is an
add to,
option.
thank you very much, Tiff. The user's experience, the customer's experience is always very important. We don't use all of the features the same way between customers. I think that's what people have come here to also hear. So we appreciate that, Tiff. Sarina, though, did you want to add anything to what
Yes.
Tiff? Yeah.
I will add, right, you do have options if you wanted to assign one SDS to 10,000 containers of ethanol that you considered identical enough to have the same safety data sheet. You can do that even if they're owned by multiple PIs. As well as every time you attach a safety data sheet, we're actually going to store it for that chemical, and you'll have your own institution specific set of safety data sheets on each chemical profile.
Cool. Great. All right. Well, the next one here is from Paula, which is, and it's to you, Tiff. Do you typically match the manufacturer of the chemical to the safety data sheet provided? In your opinion, how important is it to have the SDS from the manufacturer? And when you cannot find the manufacturer, what's your strategy on how to choose the SDS?
Yeah, I try to use the manufacturer that's provided. If it's an older container or it doesn't have a manufacturer that exists anymore, I do default to Sigma Aldrich just because they are one of the larger manufacturing companies.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Did you want to add anything to that, Sarina?
I'd say Tiff's more of an expert on me
Yeah.
there. I will say, no, Sigma Aldrich is very popular. Everyone loves Sigma Aldrich, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Yeah, we always saw theirs when in my former lives. So Jeff wants to know, can you explain how your end users remove items from inventory? Specifically, does anyone in the lab do it, or do they designate specific individuals? Do you reconcile inventory on a specific frequency? Who does that reconciliation? So I know that this is a very hot topic. I think it's very near and dear to both Tiff and Sarina. So I'll let Tiff go first, please.
Yes. So we decided as an EHSS department that we would take the burden off the researchers, that we would barcode incoming chemicals and kind of see the whole life cycle of the container. So what we did for removing things out of inventory is make out of inventory signs that are posted in each lab space. And it's up to the researcher to remove the barcode from the chemical container and place it on that sign. And when our hazardous waste team goes around and periodically checks the SAAs, if we're in there for lab assessments or inspections or anything of that nature, all we do is take a scanner with us and we scan all the barcodes out of inventory and then remove them from the sign and just throw them away. Is how we're maintaining that process.
Cool. Cool. Sarina, I'm willing to bet you want to add at least a couple of words about reconciliation.
Yeah, so reconciliation, this is one, typically once a customer has been rolled out for at least a year, at that point, they'll start doing reconciliations. Say the recommended frequency is once a year. And I'd say that's most common. I mean, you can do it as often, right? As often as needed, but once a year is sort of a nice balance there. And do they designate specific individuals? So within the BioRAFT solution, you can designate on a group by group basis who can view and who can edit inventory just for that group. So this could be set up either way. Typically, it's going to be certain individuals within a given laboratory group who can remove or edit inventory.
Cool. That's great. You know, before we start to lose too many people, people start to have to click off. I want to, and there it is. No, not yet. I want to do our closing poll. We're not closing. Don't worry, folks. We have a lot more questions to try to get to. But if Chris would please launch the, there it is. It is there. Thank you. It's on my other screen. The poll. We'd really love to get as many of you to answer this as possible. You came for reasons. Please help us out. We will pore over this data closely. You know, what other of our solutions that are listed there would you most like to learn about? And it's multiple choice. So please, if you would, fill that in. And sadly, Sarina and Tiff, the three of us are not able to answer the poll, being panelists. But no worries. And if anyone has, besides the, hey, I want a personal demo, but you want to reach out to us and talk to us about this, about Chemtracker, about these webinars, etc., please just reach out to any of us directly, or of course you can use the generic email or the Let's Talk link on our webpage. Well, good. Thank you so much. That's wonderful. Appreciate everyone who did that. I have to, that was done for Jeff's. And so Jim asks, and so he's got a lot of introductory context settings, so bear with me. My understanding to be compliant with OSHA is that you must have the manufacturer's SDS. Not, it's good. I'm not sure exactly. I'd have to look at the letter of interpretations on that. Jim, feel free to reach out to me directly later if you want to continue. But coming from a small chemical manufacturer from the East Coast, I know Sigma-Aldrich or Thermo Fisher typically buy their chemicals from smaller companies and repackage and relabel. So can you specify how Chemtracker is compliant with OSHA? And I think I'll go to Sarina first, and Tiff, if you have anything to add, of course, please feel free. And Sarina, if it's not a topic you can wade into, I can always go onto OSHA's website later on, look at the letters of interpretation, and we can follow up. But please, if you have something to add.
Certainly, yeah, this is one I will say, I assume it's compliant with OSHA, you mean OSHA lab standard. And we definitely have a lot to say about trying to be compliant with everything in OSHA here. So the OSHA lab standard, I was actually just talking with one of our customers, I guess it was this week, it's already Thursday, about this, and I think he's on here. This is one, when I talk to a lot of folks about chemical inventory and safety data sheets, right, they really go hand in hand. There's a spectrum of interpretation of the OSHA lab standard and which SDS is compliant enough or not, and how much labor and effort and time is worth putting into having an SDS library that's exactly exactly matches your inventory. So I don't know, Jim, if I can completely answer your question, other than to say, we have a lot of customers using Chemtracker and using SDS and have found ways that they find it is compliant for them.
And Tiff, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that, or if it's not an area that you want to try to comment on.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We try to use the manufacturer SDS for all the chemical containers when they're available.
Yeah, and that's fine. And I'm not gonna, I think I know better than to try to wing this unless I just looked at the letter of interpretation like a minute ago or something. So, but Jim, in all sincerity, please do feel free to reach out to me directly or Sarina directly. And we're very happy to engage in a nice conversation with you to try to figure it out. Tasha wants to know, can the system hooked up to like a Brady, which is a label vendor, printer, to print secondary labels?
I would say this is a feature we don't have today. However, if there's a feature you want to see in Chemtracker, like printing secondary labels that we don't have yet, definitely reach out to us about it. All of our new features, they come from customer requests, like reconciliation. That was when the final lab version of that came out, I think only a year ago or so. And that was a feature built based on customer request. And this is customers that have Chemtracker or ones that are considering Chemtracker. Let us know here. Okay, I see another one about barcoding here that I think is related. Jonathan, I'm going to go ahead and jump to that one. You can barcode, let's see, in terms of daughter containers, you can create additional containers. We don't have something that creates necessarily like an aliquot specifically with Chemtracker. We do have that in our RAD module. But there are ways, right? You can enter the containers, you can enter notes that it's an aliquot or like a daughter container of it there.
So I think I know what a daughter container is, but just in case we have people who are not as familiar with the term, do you mind just briefly explaining it for folks?
Sure, yeah. So that one I interpret to mean you have a large container of one chemical and you're splitting that up into smaller containers. So this could be called these aliquots or daughter containers.
Yep, exactly. Great. Thank you so much. Did you have anything to add to that, Tiff? That's fine. No worries. Gary asks, so it seems like having a centralized chemical receiving and distribution location and process. is key to maintaining a true inventory. Was this always in place, and can you describe the size of the operations and effort? And obviously this is asking you, Tiff, about it.
Yeah, absolutely. We collected the chemical inventory from May until August of last year, I would say, was the bulk of it. We had some, separate meetings outside of that time frame. The chemical receiving area actually started on July 1st. It is manned full-time by 2 staff, and this seems pretty manageable with an all-hands-on-deck type of situation if we get multiple packages, but it has been manageable and easy to filter everything in through a chemical receiving area. Sometimes things get through the cracks and I just kind of run over with my tablet and my barcodes and just visit the lab until we get everything fully streamlined.
Did you want to add anything, Sarina? You speak with so many of our customers. You must see a diversity of this. I know in the 2 institutions I worked at, one did have central receiving and one at the time I worked there did not, but I would be curious about your conversations if you wish.
Definitely. This is one I'd say central receiving, if you want to be very precise with inventory, is the way to go, but it's not always feasible. Even just from a physical building standpoint, sometimes it's just not possible. Chemtracker is designed to work with scenarios where that both exists or doesn't, or maybe it exists on one campus and not another. So we do have those entry and reconciliation tools are available both at the oversight level, like I have pulled up on my screen here, and at a lab by lab level.
Cool. See, I knew you would know more about this. All right, Marcy asks, can anyone scan a barcode and see the chemical info? Our current system has a similar feature, but only lab members can see the chemical info when the barcode is scanned. And I don't know if this is for you, Sarina, or Tiff, if you do have your own experience that you've seen on this as well.
I can take this one here as a permissions question for someone, someone who has oversight level permissions, someone in EHS, for example. They would be able to see that data for any container, but a lab member who just has lab level permissions, they would only see the inventory for their own lab. So we wouldn't show them all of that data if it's not their inventory.
Did you want to add to that, Tiff?
Just to add, so if there is a researcher that's able to access BioRAFT and they aren't assigned to a lab, they can't see any chemical inventory at all.
Right. Big part of this system is permissions. Very, very clearly. Yeah. Joel wants to know, does Chemtracker allow users to assign custom IDs to chemical containers, such as an internal stockroom part number, for example?
Absolutely. So you can assign, this could either be a barcode number or a different number that could go in. You could put this in a notes field, or lot number would be another field you could use for that. Absolutely.
Cool. And we are trying to get as many in as we can.
Yes.
Love the questions, everyone. Thank you. Kellen asked, does Chemtracker link with institutional location and people management systems so you don't have to load them manually?
Oh, I love this one. In terms of location systems, when you first roll out with BioRAFT, we'll actually do an import. So any of these that you have from other systems, we'll import that in. We haven't done a live link with another system because so far we found they usually are kind of out to date there. It's something we'd be happy to discuss. And people management systems, we absolutely, our standard is to do a read-only connection with directory and of course with single sign-on, but there's some options there.
Yeah. And Tiff, I don't know if you wanted to speak from your experience with Syracuse doing this.
I know they reach our database, but I can't speak how that happens, to be honest. But every time I've needed a member, they've been in the system. So it works.
Yeah, it works by magic, right? No, we do a lot with the IT department, obviously. There's a lot that goes into that. Yeah, very, very clearly. Thanks so much. All right. And Paula asks, how often are SDSs supposed to be updated? Oh, there's a good question that we sometimes see in chats in safety circles. Is there a regulation that mandates SDS update? Sarina or Tiff, if you wish to weigh in, you can. And if not, I will try to manage the answer.
This
I
is,
don't, yeah, I don't know the answer to that. We try to stay within 5 years the best that we can.
Mhm.
yeah, this is one, the numbers I hear are at least every 3 years.
Yeah.
I know with the process we're developing, the service we're going to offer for automatically matching those SDSs, we're hoping to check those once a year here.
Yeah, and that's what I would say. I'm not quoting any regulation. I don't know that. I don't even know if there's a letter of interpretation because I don't think it's in the original lab standard or the HASCOM standard where it might be. But in discussions that I see online quite a bit, I often see my colleagues referencing 3 years as a best practice, as Sarina mentioned. All right. So let's see, I think there's a special request for a certain question here, but I'm not seeing the question here. So I'm just going to proceed unless you know the question, Sarina. But Mohammed wants to know, do you have, let me ask Mohammed's question first, if you don't mind. Do you have somewhere where it's assigned an EPA waste code to the chemical? So a little bit wading into haz waste that I don't think we've dived into too much, although that's probably a poor metaphor, diving into haz waste.
We'll definitely avoid that. I think all the safety folks will tell me, do not do that one. So we do have some EPA waste code information into Chemtracker. This includes items like a list of P-listed chemicals, for example. And I will admit I'm not our total expert on haz waste codes, but my understanding is there's some that can get very complex depending on which chemicals are mixed together, maybe concentrations. So we don't go into all of those details, but I'd say there's some data in that area.
Great. And is that something that you deal with yourself at Syracuse, Tiff?
I am not personally involved in that, so I can't speak to that. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Having worked with the haz waste folks at a couple of institutions, they do marvelous jobs, but I let them do their work, definitely. Sarina, did you have a certain question you wanted to jump to, I think?
So there is one question about kits and biologicals. And this one I wanted to answer because I get asked about kits all the time. These are one of those, hard to inventory chemicals. And this is another case where I really want to give a credit to Stanford for designing this original structure of the Chemtracker database. I think we might have a few folks from Stanford on the call here potentially. Well, thank you, because for kits, we have general entries for those within the Chemtracker database. So there's going to be some by brand name, but a lot you'll enter as a generic kit type, and you can enter these by counting them. In terms of biologicals, we aren't tracking biologicals in Chemtracker today yet. We've really had a chemical focus. However, BioRAFT does have a biosafety module for tracking IBC registrations, and you can also get material data reports in there. So a little bit different specifically than inventory, but is aimed at tracking those materials.
Thanks. I do want to also go to Ryan's question because it is for Tiff and we are hitting the hour mark. So we're going to have to wrap up. We won't get to every single question. And you all asked wonderful questions. Please do feel free to get in touch with us directly. Sarina, if you don't mind dropping your work email into, not your personal email, your work email into the chat as was requested, that would be great. I'm sure Kellen would appreciate it. But Ryan asked Tiffany stated she has 29,000 chemicals. That's a lot. How many containers does she have in their inventory? So is that something you can address?
I'm sorry, I misspoke in that answer. So we have 29,000 chemical containers, and about 7,800 are unique chemicals. So I hope that clarifies that. But sure. Yeah, so around 30,000 chemical containers total.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know if Sarina can speak to whatever the number one who has the most of any of our. Can you?
I can't say the institution.
No, not the name of the customer, but do you know the number approximately?
Yes, we're getting close to 500,000 in terms of current inventory. So that doesn't also include, we save all of your deleted inventory data as well that you have access to. So those inventories can get very large.
Yeah. I am so sorry we could not get to every single question, but boy, thank you all so much for coming. And especially thank you very much to Tiff for joining us from Syracuse University and sharing with us her customer's experience. And Tiff, I don't know if you had any words of wisdom or closing things you'd like to share, and then I'll ask Sarina to do the same and I will close us out.
It's been a pleasure speaking with all of you this afternoon, and I'm happy to share my Chemtracker experience with you. So thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you so much, Tiff. And Sarina, any final words of wisdoms or offers you would like to extend, please?
I'd like to say thank you to everyone for taking the time to attend here, and a special thanks to Tiff for sharing her experience here. It's, always a joy for us at BioRAFT to hear from folks how they're using the system and what's really working for them.
Wonderful. And I also already saw someone has reached out via email to at least me, if not also Sarina. So technology is a wonderful thing. Thank you all so much for coming. This was wonderful. We're going to look at the poll. We will be back with our EHS webinars for the next 6 weeks, every 2 weeks. And we will be back with another product webinar probably in 2 months based on your responses. Thanks for coming. Thank you, Tiff. Thank you, Sarina, and thank you, Chris, and everyone else behind the scenes here at BioRAFT. For BioRAFT and the entire team, thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.